Hello everyone. Can life originate from nothing? When we talk of life and life forms in general, we are referring to the holistic approach to the existence of life as we currently know. That would require a worldview that constitutes a human biological body with a rational mind that has the capacity to comprehend beyond the physical matter into the spiritual through the soul of the Spirit that has been endowed by His Creator God at the moment of conception. The most important question to address is considering the complexity of the existing universe and its capacity to foster complex life on a single planet, the Earth, out of the billions of worlds beyond our solar system. What is the possible conclusion and evidence for a theistic creator God as revealed in the Bible to that of a non-theistic process of the origination of life? We shall consider two major reasons for a theistic creator God to originate life from nothing. First of all, the metaphysical reason. When one makes the argument for God, it raises a fundamental and basic question. Why is there something instead of nothing? This is a question that philosophers, theologians, and scientists alike have debated and wrestled over and still do. Derivatives of this fundamental questioning are the questions of existence. Like, why is there life? Why are we here? Why is the earth there? And why is there a universe in the first place? These questions are not illusions or imaginary, but real and coherent with our realities. They do exist, and our lives are real and not imaginary. Stephen Hawking, the physicist, claims spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. It is not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper and set the universe going. And he attributes this spontaneous creation to the law of gravity. He said, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. You see, the law of gravity, and for that matter, no amount of laws can create anything. As I have stated in my earlier address, the law of electric charge on its own cannot make a light bulb. It will require an external agent, an intelligent designer like Thomas Edison, to create it in accordance to a design that is conceived and with the raw materials that is needed to accomplish it. Therefore, the law of gravity, at best, it can describe its operation through the rigorous scientific observations that can be described by a mathematical equation. Nothing more than that. The fundamental question that the naturalist, no matter how hard they try, using various hypotheses or theories, couldn't answer this, the causality of all the laws of nature into existence. Other theoretical physicists attribute this beginning to the quantum fluctuation theory, like Lawrence Krauss in his book, A Universe from Nothing. And he says the laws of quantum mechanics tell us that empty space is a boiling, brewing vessel of virtual particles that will come in and out of existence in a time scale that is so short that you can't even see them. Strange things can happen. In fact, it is possible without any supernatural agent for matter and particles to be created from nothing. It is even possible for space and time for themselves was popped into existence from nothing. It is allowed by the laws of physics. You see, it seems like his definition of nothing is not really nothing, because his reference to empty space, what physicists call quantum vacuum, implies there is space, and it allows for virtual particles, and that implies matter. And time scales that are so short implies that there is time. What all of this implies is that there was something, and the universe was created from something. And isn't that precisely what the Big Bang created? Space, matter, and time. This is self-contradictory. Another question that the physicists need to answer is, why is there order in the universe and not chaos? According to their theory, if the universe was formed out of quantum fluctuations that are unstable in its normal states, then inflated into a massive expansion and explosion, this points to a chaotic beginning with no laws to govern its processes that could eventually result in an orderly universe that contains 1 billion trillion stars. That is 1 followed by 21 zeros. Can anything come out of such chaotic processes that is totally uncontrolled to an orderly universe that contains such huge amount of systems of stars, and not only that, is fine-tuned for human life like us to exist? Whenever we see massive uncontrolled explosions that occur, it always results in chaos and destruction that is of no substantial value, but needs to be cleaned up and restarted. If that's true, then an uncontrolled explosion of virtual particles without any laws to govern it and no intelligence behind it will improbably result in chaos and destruction, and to a non-conducive environment for life as we know to exist. A more rational and plausible explanation to the question, why is there something instead of nothing, is that of the theist that is based on the biblical worldview. Max Planck, the Nobel Prize winner for the discovery of quantum theory in physics, said like this in 1918, all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibrate and hold this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter, rightly said in the context of this humongous universe. There is something instead of nothing because God, who is uncaused, self-existing, eternal and all-powerful, spoke into existence the universe solely by his creative power inherent in his words out of nothing. The biblical God, who is outside of space and time, is perfectly capable to create life out of nothing. According to Hebrews chapter 11 verse 3, we read, by faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are invisible or visible. How did God bring into existence the whole universe? The answer is found in the power of his word. Basically, when the Lord spoke, his incomprehensible mind and intellect transferred the design, that is the information required, and the raw materials needed to create the universe, which included the laws of nature, energy, matter, space, and time. And then the breath of his mouth, as we read in Psalm 33 verse 6, provided the workmanship required to bring it into reality, and that is the power behind the creation of the universe. The material things by which the visible universe is made of, like stars, planet, etc., were made of invisible things like energy, atom, molecules, gases, etc. In John chapter 1, verse 1 and 3, we read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were created through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made." This description of the creation of the universe by God, as revealed in the Bible, perfectly lines up with the physical nature and composition of the present universe. In Psalm 33, verse 6 and 7, it says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of His mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays up the deep in store waters. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Him. For He spoke it, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast." Again in Job chapter 38, verse 33, God is questioning Job as to whether he knows who put the ordinances of the heaven or the laws in its place to govern the universe. And so he asked Job, "Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you set their dominion over the earth?" Now, to answer the question, why is there something instead of nothing, from the perspective of purpose and meaning, requires an intelligent mind and creator. Now, what do I mean? You see, the concept of purpose and meaning are attributes that are connected to immaterial beings, derived from an intelligent mind, and not to material things like atoms and molecules or mere objects. According to Quentin Smith, in his argument against theism, said like this: "This world exists non-essentially, improbably, and causelessly. It exists for absolutely no reason at all." You see, the naturalist cannot find any purpose or attribute any value to this universe, and much less to the human life, because everything is just natural and material. For example, if I need to know my wife and the purpose of our marriage at a more fundamental and basic level, I have to see her not as the construct of mere atoms, molecules, and the product of random chance and time, but as an individual of incredible value and worth who has a rational and intelligent mind created in the image of God. That means I must start spending time with her in exchanging our thoughts and ideas constructively to know the real person beyond the physical appearance, and that can only be accomplished when there is a mind. You can only answer the question, why God created the universe, and specifically me, as we know their creator God personally and begin to understand His mind through the Bible. And that is the only way you can know the purpose and meaning of your life. It is as you know the Creator personally and begin to understand His mind as revealed in the Bible. In Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, it says, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and power and honor, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." Why God created the universe and specifically me? Because He is worthy to receive glory and honor and power. In Psalm 33 verse 8, it says, "Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Him." You see, when you comprehend the tremendous power, the might, the wisdom, and the knowledge that went into the creation of the universe and the creation of all that is needed for the sustainment of life, then you will stand in awe of Him. The purpose and desire of God in creation is for us to know Him and to enjoy Him personally as the Creator God. The second reason can life originate from nothing is the human physiology. When one examines the complexity of the human physiology and the intricate details of something as basic as the human cell with its structure and function, of which there are approximately 30 trillion, to the outworking of the neurological networks in our brain and the DNA, it gives evidence for a rational intelligence behind its design and creation. Now, the naturalist and the materialist argue that the current state and configuration of the human physiology, including all of its complexity and processes, is the result of a mindless, natural, and unguided evolutionary process that evokes no intelligence to its formation nor processes. You know, when you look at the human body, for example, there are about 86 billion neurons in the human brain, which makes up the building blocks of the nervous system that functions in transmitting information bilaterally from the brain throughout the body. It's a complicated information system. For example, according to the National Geography, it takes 82,944 processors and 40 minutes for a supercomputer to simulate a single second of human brain activity. And that is what computer scientists say. The complexity of the human brain is illustrated by the National Geography, how grand the task of mapping the human brain with precision is. It reported in its February 2014 edition titled "The New Science of the Brain" that scientists have created a 3D model of part of a mouse brain the size of a grain of salt. To map out this tiny part of the mouse brain with accuracy, they used an electron microscope to image it in 200 sections, each as thick as a human hair. A human brain visualized at this level of detail would require an amount of data equal to all the written material in all the libraries of the world, wrote National Geographic. How complex our brain is. And now to postulate that something as complex as the human information processing system is the result of a mindless, unguided process of evolution is irrational, because complexity and complex things require a much more complex mind. It cannot emerge out of virtual particles that are mindless and unintelligent materials. Another marvel of the human physiology is the DNA. You see, DNA is a double helix molecule that contains the genetic makeup that makes us unique physical characteristics contained in every single cell. This is what defines who you are, defines your physical characteristics. According to Dr. Stephen Meyer, he said one of the most extraordinary discoveries of the 20th century was that DNA actually stores information. The detailed instructions for assembling proteins in the form of a 4-character digital code. You see, this coding language consists of some 3 billion genetic letters, and the information contained in human DNA is roughly equivalent to 12 sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica containing 384 volumes, and if stacked, would fill 48 feet of library shelves, yet compared to its microscopic size. You see, when you compare the microscopic size of a DNA and to the amount of information it is able to contain and process. It is mind-boggling. According to biologist Michael Denton, the physical size of a DNA is 2 millionth of a millimeter thick, and that is what holds 384 volumes, 12 sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica. It is mind-boggling. Now, what is important about DNA? The important thing about DNA is that it contains a coding language, an information technology system that is so complex and so efficient that it can process and define how every single cell in our body should function to produce the protein needed for our body. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, said like this concerning DNA. DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than anything ever we've devised. You see, information always points to intelligence, and intelligence points to a rational mind. And that is the point that I'm trying to convey, that DNA contains the coding language. And if it has to contain an intelligent coding language, it points to an intelligence higher than the DNA itself. For example, the Microsoft operating system is a complex code of information processed sequentially that makes our computers operate and usable whenever we turn it on. And this complex code of information was designed and created by intelligent computer scientists and programmers. It would be considered absolutely insane for me and irrational to say that the complex code of information that makes up the Microsoft operating system came out of solely an unguided, natural, and mindless process of chance and time. And yet, that is what we are willing to believe. When it comes to DNA, that contains one of the most complex coding languages of the human body, it is acceptable to argue that it is the resultant of an unintelligent, mindless, natural, unguided process of evolution. Something as complex as the DNA must be, by definition, the resultant of a more complex intelligence and mind, which rationally points to an all-knowing being who is, according to the biblical worldview, the Creator God. The Bible states that Christ created not only the visible things, that is, the material things in the universe, but also the invisible things, the immaterial things, and the things that are not perceived by normal sight, like the DNA and the intricate details of the composition of the cell and so on. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 and 17, the Apostle Paul makes precisely the same point as to the fact that he is the creator of the invisible things as well. He says, "For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things consist." Former atheist Dr. Anthony Flew questioned like this: "It is legitimate to ask oneself regarding this 3 billion letter code instructing the cell. Who wrote this script? Who placed this working code inside the cell?" Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the Human Genome Project that decoded the human genome sequencing in 2000, said like this: "It is humbling for me and awe-inspiring to realize that we have caught the first glimpse of our own instruction book, previously known only to God." Joseph Tour, the professor of chemistry at Rice University, said about the sheer complexity of a single cell in our body and how it is utterly impossible for us to create or make a cell with our current processes. And he said like this, but even if one were given all the molecules needed in complete stereochemical purity and the information code, could a cell be constructed using the chemical and the biochemical tools that we have today? I have written about such a hypothetical experiment and how it could be impossible using today's expertise to even construct the lipid bilayer, namely the exterior packaging that holds the cell's nanomachinery in place. Just the lipid bilayer, which itself surrounds thousands of nanosystems, is beyond our ability to synthesize. The conclusion of that thought experiment is that life based upon amino acids, nucleotides, saccharides, and lipids is an error. Life should not exist anywhere in our universe. Life should not even exist on the surface of the earth. Yet we are led to believe that 3.8 billion years ago, the requisite compounds could be found in some cave or undersea vent, and somehow or other they assembled themselves into the first cell. David said approximately 3020 years ago the exquisite wonder of the human faculties and how wonderfully he made the human body. He said, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. David declares the fact that we are wonderfully made. Marvelous are the works that went into the formation of the intricate details of the human physiology. And the fact and the most important thing is that my soul knows very well. It is when our souls knows the truth that we are wonderfully made in the image of God by our Creator that we begin to appreciate His wisdom and knowledge and the tremendous work and the power that went behind the creation. As I conclude this address, the plausible reason for the origination of life from a Creator God is much more rational and coherent with reality. If life originated from God, then it implies the question of purpose and meaning for my life. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 7, the Apostle Paul makes this point. For it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. The purpose of our life is to know the knowledge of the glory of God that was manifested in the life and work of Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago. Now you may ask, how do I know that knowledge of the glory of God? It is simply by surrendering your life to your Creator God, who came into this world in the person of Christ to give you life as a ransom for your sins. He gave His life, and thereby rescuing from the eternal condemnation that awaits to the hope of eternal life and glory in heaven. And that is the beauty of the purpose for which God created us. That it is to know the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And this treasure, this valuable knowledge of the glory of God has been given in earthen vessels, that is our physical bodies, our flesh, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. It is when we realize this tremendous truth that it is the glory and the knowledge of God that is behind the working of the universe and the intricate details of our human body that we say that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. Thank you.